Okay, everybody, this is the last section of Mesopotamia. It's called Later Peoples of the Fertile Crescent. So I'm just going to go over what you will learn. On the left here, it says main ideas. The Babylonians, you're going to learn about. They conquered Mesopotamia and created a code of law. 2, invasions of Mesopotamia changed the region's culture. 3, the Phoenicians, who we're going to learn about, built a trading society in the eastern Mediterranean region. And the big idea is after the Sumerians, many cultures ruled parts of the Fertile Crescent. So we're going to read about several different people that ruled that area. Okay, let's go to, I'm just going to jump right into building background. Actually, I lied. Okay, let's look at the key terms. We have monarch, Hammurabi's code, which you're going to have to know, chariot, Nebuchadnezzar, and alphabet. So let's go to building background. Many peoples invaded Mesopotamia. A series of kings conquered the lands between the rivers. Each new culture inherited the earlier achievements of the Sumerians. Some of the later invasions of the region also introduced skills and ideas that still influence civilization today, such as a written law code. All right, let's talk about the Babylonians first. Okay, the Babylonians conquer Mesopotamia. Although rose to glory after the death of Sargon, repeated foreign attacks drained its strength. By 2000 BC, lay in ruins. With Ur's power gone, several waves of invaders battled to gain control of Mesopotamia. Okay, so let's talk about Babylon first. Babylon was the home to one such group. That city was located on the Euphrates River near what is today Baghdad, Iraq. Babylon had once been a Sumerian town. By 1800 BC, however, it was home to a powerful government of its own. In 1792 BC, Hammurabi became Babylon's king. He would become the city's greatest monarch, a ruler of a kingdom or empire. Hammurabi's code. Okay, pay attention, you guys. This is going to be on the quiz or on the test. Okay, Hammurabi's code. Okay, Hammurabi was a brilliant war leader. His armies fought many battles to expand his power. Eventually, he brought all of Mesopotamia into his empire, called the Babylonian Empire, after his capital. Hammurabi's skills were not limited to the battlefield, though. He was also an able ruler who could govern a huge empire. He oversaw many building and irrigation projects and improved Babylon's tax collection system to help pay for them. He also brought much prosperity through increased trade. Hammurabi, however, is most famous for his code of laws. So this is what you need to know. Okay, Hammurabi's code was a set of 282 laws that dealt with almost every part of daily life. There were laws on everything from trade, loans, and theft to marriage, injury, and murder. It contained some ideas that are still found in today's laws. Specific crimes brought specific penalties. However, social class did matter. For instance, injuring a rich man brought a greater penalty than injuring a poor man. Hammurabi's code was important not only for how thorough it was, but also because it was written down for all to see. People all over the empire could read exactly what was against the law. Hammurabi ruled for 42 years. During his reign, Babylon became the most important city in Mesopotamia. However, after his death, Babylonian power declined. The kings that followed faced invasions from people Hammurabi had conquered. Before long, the Babylonian Empire came to an end. Okay, so here's what we need to know about him. He was the first one to write laws down. Why did he write laws down? Well, because he didn't want people to say that they didn't know something was against the law. Just as now people say, well, I didn't know that was against the law. Well, we have a written code of laws. Okay, so our laws are all written down. They may not all be written on the street, but they're written. You can go on websites. You can look at California penal codes. But even look at Bristow. You guys have should have a handbook, or if you don't, it's online, so you can see exactly what violations could get you suspended or expelled or whatever. So you can't say I didn't know it was wrong to, I don't know, bring fireworks to school or something like that, where it's clearly in the handbook and you cannot do that. Okay, so one expression you may have heard before is eye for an eye. If you've ever heard that expression before, that means like it literally meant back then, if you look over here, I'm looking at this primary source historical document, uh, law number 196. If a man put out the eye of another man, his eye shall be put out. Okay, 197. If you break another man's bone, his bone shall be broken. Okay, so this seemed like, kind of a pretty fair deal. So it was fair for that time. Some people might think it was a little harsh, but they had to have laws and they had to write them down that kept people in line. Just like now, if we don't have laws, okay, there will be chaos. Think about it. Think about if we didn't have any. Think about, just start with, say, your house. If you don't have a parent in your house and no one is there to enforce any rules, what would happen to the household? Okay, it would be pretty chaotic. Okay, kids are kids. They're going to do what they want to do. That's just how we are. We don't like to be told what to do, but we have to have laws. We have to have rules. Okay, we can't just do whatever we feel like doing. And they even knew that way back when. Um, but it was also different though for different classes. If you look at uh, rule number 198, it says, if he put out the eye of a freedman, that means someone who used to be a slave, or break the bone of a freedman, he shall pay one gold mina. If you put out the eye of a man's slave, or break the bone of a man's slave, he shall pay one half of that. So a slave, injuring a slave wasn't as bad as injuring someone who was freed, like a freed slave. Okay, like 221 says, if the physician heal the broken bone or diseased soft part of a man, the patient shall pay the physician 5 shekels. If it was a free man, that means someone who used to be a slave, you only had to pay 3 shekels. And if it was a slave, okay, they only had to pay 2 shekels because they just weren't looked at as valuable as free citizens. Okay, so it did sort of depend on your class. All right, let's move to invasions of Mesopotamia. Several other civilizations also developed in and around the Fertile Crescent. As their armies battled each other for fertile land, control of the region passed from one empire to another. The Hittites and Kassites. A people known as the Hittites built a strong kingdom in Asia Minor, in what is today Turkey. Their success came in part from two key military advantages they had over rivals. First, the Hittites were among the first people to master ironworking. This meant that they could make the strongest weapons of the time. Second, the Hittites skillfully used the chariot, a wheeled horse-drawn cart used in battle. The chariots allowed Hittite soldiers to move quickly around a battlefield and fire arrows at their enemy. Using these advantages, Hittite forces captured Babylon around 1595 BC. Hittite rule did not last long, however. Soon after taking Babylon, the Hittite king was killed by an assassin. The kingdom plunged into chaos. The Kassites, a people who lived north of Babylon, captured the city and ruled for almost 400 years. The Assyrians. Late in the 1200s BC, the Assyrians from northern Mesopotamia briefly gained control of Babylon. However, their empire was soon overrun by invaders. After this defeat, the Assyrians took about 300 years to recover their strength. Then, starting about 900 BC, they began to conquer all the Fertile Crescent. They even took over parts of Asia Minor and Egypt. Okay, so one thing you do need to know about the Hittites, the Kassites, and even the Assyrians is the weapons. They used this chariot. Okay, they were some of the first to use a chariot in battle. Okay, um, they also had iron weapons. So if any of you say have like an iron skillet at home, pick that thing up and imagine hitting somebody over the head with that. Now imagine your weapons, like your swords and things like that, made of this iron. Very, very heavy, but you could inflict a lot of damage using iron weapons in battle. Okay, and they would protect you a lot better as well. So that was the advantage. That's why they were able to defeat a lot of the other armies in the area. Okay, so this is just a map. It shows you the Babylonian Empire first. Okay, then the Assyrian Empire advanced, the territory even a greater distance. Okay, so that's what this map shows. Okay, the key to Assyrians' success was their strong army. Like the Hittites, the Assyrians used iron weapons and chariots. The army was well organized, and every soldier knew his role. The Assyrians were fierce in battle. Before attacking, they spread terror by looting villages and burning crops. Anyone who dared to resist them was killed. After conquering Mesopotamia, the Assyrians ruled from Nineveh. They demanded heavy taxes from across the empire. Areas that resisted these demands were harshly punished. Assyrian kings ruled their large empire through local leaders. Each governed a small area, collected taxes, enforced laws, and raised troops for the army. Roads were built to link distant parts of the empire. Messengers on horseback were sent to deliver orders to faraway officials. The Chaldeans. In 652 BC, a series of wars broke out in the Assyrian Empire over who should rule. These wars greatly weakened the empire. Sensing this weakness, the Chaldeans, a group from the Syrian desert, led other peoples in the attack on the Assyrians. In 612 BC, they destroyed Nineveh and the Assyrian Empire. In its place, the Chaldeans set up a new empire of their own. Nebuchadnezzar, the most famous Chaldean king, rebuilt Babylon into a beautiful city. According to legend, his grand palace featured the famous Hanging Gardens. Trees and flowers grew on its terraces and roofs. From the ground, the gardens seemed to hang in the air. The Chaldeans admired Sumerian culture. They studied the Sumerian language and built temples to Sumerian gods. At the same time, Babylon became a center for astronomy. Chaldeans charted the positions of the stars and kept track of economic, political, and weather events. They also created a calendar and solved complex problems of geometry. There's a picture of the Syrian army. And finally, let's come to the Phoenicians here. So this is what you need to know also for the quiz. Okay. The Phoenicians. At the western end of the Fertile Crescent along the Mediterranean Sea was a land known as Phoenicia. It was not home to great military power and was often ruled by foreign governments. Nevertheless, the Phoenicians created a wealthy trading society. The geography of Phoenicia. Today, the nation of Lebanon occupies most of what was once Phoenicia. Mountains border the region to the north and east. The western border is the Mediterranean. Phoenicia had few resources. One thing it did have, however, was cedar. Cedar trees were prized for their timber, a valuable trade item, but Phoenicia's overland trade routes were blocked by mountains and hostile neighbors. Phoenicians had to look to the sea for a way to trade. The expansion of trade. Motivated by a desire for trade, the people of Phoenicia became expert sailors. They built one of the world's finest harbors at the city of Tyre. Fleets of fast Phoenician trading ships sailed to ports all around the Mediterranean Sea. Traders traveled to Egypt, Greece, Italy, Sicily, and Spain. They even passed through the Strait of Gibraltar to reach the Atlantic Ocean. The Phoenicians founded several new colonies along their trade routes. Carthage, located on the northern coast of Africa, was the most famous of these. It later became one of the most powerful cities on the Mediterranean. Phoenicia grew wealthy from its trade. Besides lumber, the Venetians traded silverwork, ivory, carvings, and slaves. Beautiful glass objects also became valuable trade items after crafters invented glass blowing, the art of heating and shaping glass. In addition, the Phoenicians made purple dye from a type of shellfish. They then traded cloth dyed with this purple color. Phoenician purple fabric was very popular with rich people. The Phoenicians' most important achievement, however, wasn't a trade good. To record their activities, Phoenicians developed one of the world's first alphabets. An alphabet is a set of letters that can be combined to form words. This development made writing much easier. It had a major impact on the ancient world and on our own. In fact, the alphabet was used for the English language. The alphabet we use for the English language is based on the Phoenicians as modified by later civilizations. Later civilizations, including our own, benefit from the innovations passed along by Phoenician traders. Okay, so Phoenicia, if you look over here, here's Phoenicia, which is now Lebanon. Okay, so they had cedar, which was really a very valuable trade item. They also had this purple dye that they got from shellfish, probably kept it a secret, and that was very valuable. But the thing that they're most known for that you guys need to know is the development of their alphabet. So we got our alphabet from the Phoenicians. Um, so if you ever look at Phoenician alphabet, it's kind of similar to ours. It's changed a little over the time, but that is what they used, and it spread along these trade routes. So that's the one thing. If you ever heard of the term like phonics, okay, phonemic awareness, all those things, that all comes from the word Phoenicia or the Phoenicians. Okay, so that's sort of the history of our alphabet there. Okay, so that is it, and thank you for listening.